Hey, this is Notser, and this is Untitled. This week I want to talk about 0.6.0 relaunch. They're going to be having another public test server. I don't know what the changes are. I'm interested to see. We'll obviously talk about it. I also want to address some of the videos, audio, there was buzzing, what's going on, how did it all work out? It sounds like it's working. Why is it working? People care, or people don't care. I want to share what I've been going through the last week or so, and I think you're interested. Finally, yes, I did release a World of Tanks video. I wanted to see how people responded to it. It was a great game. It wasn't just some video to release. I also am interested in other things, and I'm going to talk about that. So, 0.6.0, Commander Skills. We've covered a lot of the Commander Skills. I've tried to at least. And given my feedback, and you've given your feedback as well. I'm sure Wargaming reads the comments for all these different videos that have been made. They probably would appreciate a more reasonable response. I'm going to guess that calling them certain expletives or yelling is not going to get as much help as you probably hope. Maybe just be respectful and, tell them what you think. Act like an adult. That'll probably work out better than the standard internet response. And 0.6.0 will be relaunched on the public test server. They basically want to have all this done so the patch can come out in January. It is a big, big, big patch. It's going to cement the commander skill tree, and it's going to make it head and shoulders above a lot of similar systems. World of Tanks being one of those, it needs improvement. Bad. I really like everything about it. Elite Commander XP, I really appreciate it only going up to level 4. It's nice that you'll actually be able to get level 19. Only press can basically even experience that, and I almost avoid it because it's just not a realistic skill level to have for a commander, So all of that is great. Regardless of any of the buffs or nerfs, that is going to make the entire commander experience better. You'll be able to take Elite Commander XP and level up old commanders or low-level commanders to get out of that funky area where they're just so weak. You'll be able to reach the pinnacle much sooner so you can add variety, hopefully, if they don't just cream all of the skills and only leave a couple that are obviously the best. But there are definitely things I want to see changed. I would like to see them change radio in some form to make it less ugly. That's the most important thing to me. I don't like the idea that it's always on. I think it's a bad design. It's one thing for situation awareness to exist. The spotting mechanics of the game are not inherently obvious, right? You don't assume that you see this entire map, and yet there are things undetected, right? That's counterintuitive to how we have been brought up as gamers, or just as people who exist in this world. In RTSs, they solve that by having like a fog of war, where there's darkness, but clearly the map doesn't get dark. So how do you communicate that there is a potential threat in the area that is unseen? Well, situation awareness works. Sixth Sense, which should be on by default, but it isn't for whatever reason in World of Tanks. It all works. But radio is adding a new mechanic. Now, granted, I think it's not giving you as much information as a skilled player would already know. I've been through this. But it's up to the community, and I don't think that destroyers deserve a nerf. That's probably the bigger issue here. The destroyers, just to list off skills that are worse than they were previously in the old version. Torpedo rearmament, that's just straight up more expensive. The demolition expert, now they did make it cheaper, but they nerfed the skill itself, so you can't get that ceiling of maybe 1 or 2% higher. Maybe that's the difference between lighting 15 fires and 10, right? They also nerfed basic firing training. They made that into sort of an AA focused skill, and they did not want that to be a level 1. Everyone would take it, and AA would just straight up be 20% better. then you would have to balance around everyone having it instead of putting it deeper and forcing people to decide between each skill, right? And there are other things that they've changed or altered or improved. They didn't really give enough back to the destroyer as they moved everything down. They basically gave concealment for a level 4, which is nice, but they didn't really give you a level 1 or a level 2 that's extremely compelling to compete with Last Stand. Last Stand is just really good for a destroyer. They moved up preventative maintenance, and preventative maintenance might be really good for a destroyer, but that's not very sexy. 30% of your modules will not be incapacitated anymore, or you have a 30% chance to not incapacitate your modules. That's just not really sexy. I can't say that I'm really happy about that. And you have priority target, which of course would be useful, except you pretty much know you're always the target of desire to the enemy if you're within any distance of them. I think they need to make sure that there are plenty of skills that are compelling for destroyers to take, for cruisers to take, and of course battleships. We know battleships have plenty of compelling. Even the aircraft carrier. The anti-fire ability allows you to launch and not launch. It's basically so nerfed that you wouldn't take it. It doubles the time it takes to service your vehicle. So if it takes 40 seconds, it's going to take 80 seconds while on fire. And I assume that whenever you're unlit, it's just going to return to that same percentage of serviced. So every 2 seconds in fire is only going to give you 1 second out of fire. So you might as well focus on anti-fire, high cooldown return on your damage control, so you always have it up and all that stuff, instead of just allowing yourself to burn for an extended period of time. And honestly, I would prefer that. It doesn't make any sense that you could launch or retrieve aircraft while on fire. I could totally see the possibility of servicing if maybe it was in the hangar, but even then, whenever an aircraft lands on the deck, they usually just bring it down quickly, or they have stuff on the deck itself and they rearm like that. That's part of why the Japanese failed at Midway, is because they left so much stuff on the deck and we just bombed the crap out of them. And that obviously ignited. So I just would hope that they would not focus on just making the battleship have more options. Please give the destroyers and the cruisers more options. Maybe make skills that are just for those guys. It doesn't really feel like they get the same level of attention as battleships do on skills designed just for them. I mean, fire prevention, yes, everyone can be lit on fire, but it's really only good if you're big. And your damage control takes a really long time, right? There are plenty of skills like this, where it's like, yeah, everyone can benefit from it, but nobody's really going to use that. They'd rather spend it on other things. So I just hope they address that. I'm curious to look at it. We will talk about it more whenever it goes live. But let's move on. So audio, what was going on? I got a mixer. I went analog. Analog versus digital. Analog is going to allow you to manipulate the audio a little bit more than digital. It's going to have more interfaces that are supported for it because it's existed for longer. And I wanted to do that. I felt like having a live mixing option is better for a stream. I could even add some weird effect to my voice, but I'm not going to do that. I think that's kind of childish, but you get the idea. It would fit for the scenario. Now, maybe I'm going down a hall or maybe making a joke, but outside that, voice manipulation isn't really necessary. I'm a teacher, and failure is also a teaching device. So humor from my failure, along with teaching. But the audio was screwed up. It was getting feedback. It was getting ground loop issues. So what I did is I bought a couple 3.5 millimeter, and that's how you connect to your speaker system, obviously on your PC, 3.5 or USB. 3.5 is going to be using an onboard card, or you buy a PCI Express card, which is sort of an internal card that you can add on. Suffice it to say, I have now filtered all my 3.5mm coming from my mixer, coming from my PC, going out, trying to get rid of that whole humming or buzzing electrical interface that happens. Interference, not interface. And I also bought a de-hummer. That's what they call it, a de-hummer. And what happens is if electrical devices share the same plug or power outage loop, and if they're connected via analog, they somehow bring across that ground loop. They complete a ground loop, and the analog is going to hear it, obviously. Analog is very much electrical. You can have good analog or bad analog. For digital, it's on or it's off. It's perfect or it's irrelevant. So that's sort of the difference between analog versus digital. Analog requires much higher quality cable to maintain the quality over distance, whereas with digital, you know if it works or it doesn't. So we finally got it fixed. I finally have filtered out all the crap that my PCs have. I think it is a power supply on my streaming PC. But I'm obviously not going to change that right now. I might change it in the future. I don't know. But we filtered it out, and it seems to work pretty well. I can adjust it live during the stream. I don't have to go into some software solution, and I really enjoy it. It's nice to have that physical feel of volume control and adjusting compression and pitch and all that stuff. I haven't made use of it. You just have to listen to my stupid voice, but I might be really deep or really high. Of course, I've done the Mickey stuff before. Haha. And you get the idea. So I'm happy that I've gotten that done. Finally, it works. It works. Some people are like, why did you change it? I don't know. I just can't help myself. I try and improve every aspect of the content for you. And sometimes that hurts you. I'm sorry. But we gotta go to the moon. We gotta risk some things in order to get further. Now, some of you have noticed that I've released a video for World of Tanks. I released it because, first of all, that was a pretty awesome comeback. I do enjoy history, and I want World of Tanks to be successful. I know it is successful, but I want it to be World of Warships design successful. It feels a little archaic at this point, and I just want it to be better. And some people are like, why do you play it if you find faults in it? I find faults in everything. That's just how I am. There's not a perfect game. There's not a perfect movie. There's not a perfect song or a book. Okay? I've never seen anything that was perfect. So for me, it's normal for me to critique everything. Absolutely everything. That's what I do. I'm sorry. I can't help it. So I released it. It seemed that most people enjoyed it. They appreciated it. That's all I was asking for. Is it going to be a normal video happening every day? Probably not. I don't have time to play it as much. But if I get a good game, I'm going to share it. Why not? I've also been thinking about my stream schedule. I stream on Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday. And I really enjoy it. But you know what day is kind of open? Tuesday. Tuesday is kind of open. And what happens on Tuesday for most gamers, well, at least for me? Games come out on Tuesday in America. And I think usually they come out for everyone in streaming, and Tuesday is usually the accepted day for streamers to release content. I enjoy video games, and obviously I would enjoy sharing a game or two that I play, you know, like Battlefield 1 or whatever, when it actually comes out. I know I'm not good enough to continue that streak, but since Tuesday is open for me, I would be open to sharing my first impression with games that I enjoy. I'm really into FPS single players, I'm really into strategy, and just talking, chilling, enjoying your company. I really like chat. I actually am very surprised that I enjoy the chat so much. I've met so many nice people that it's been fantastic. I also want to play old games when there's no new releases. Games that come to my mind: Outlaws, Medal of Honor, Allied Assault. I really enjoyed X-Wing vs. TIE Fighter. All these old games. Doom, Quake. All these old games that I used to... Half-Life. that I played growing up, and I would like to play every once in a while on Tuesday. I don't know. What do you think? Sometimes I feel like PC is forgotten whenever you go retro. They go consoles, and then for PC it's like, is it ever retro? Well, some people don't know these things exist, and I would love to share games that I've played, games that I didn't play, games that you played that have great memories. That's the sort of thing that would be fun on Tuesday if there's not a new release that I'm really into or something like that. Let me know what you think about all this stuff. Also, the World of Tanks video, did you find it interesting for those who have never played World of Tanks? And for those who have, was the game worthy of being shared? Did you feel like, okay, this was fun to watch even though I played it, I know the idea? I hope this was interesting. I hope you have a fantastic day, and I'll catch you next time.